union and harmony. Helen told her family to expect the Emersons to agree to the meeting. She asked them all to get dressed into something appropriate for a first meeting. Something more than just panties in Dawn's case, or boxer shorts for Alistair. Ben had a head start, he didn't have to remove anything to start dressing. She had warned Alistair that a prank call from her cell phone was the signal to collect the kids and come to the lounge. Luke was the only one to notice Helen pick up her cell phone and make the call. He recognized the dialer screen, and saw her dial, but then just hang up. A minute or so later they all heard the footsteps in the hall and Luke guessed what she had done. They all rose as their new friends entered the room. Helen handled the introductions, complete with awkward handshakes between the kids. The moment he saw young Dawn, Luke's heart began to race. She was gorgeous. Perfect ! And so white. Dawn was also much impressed with a slim, dark boy with a killer smile. None of the crowd had noticed their first, intense eye contact, except Sam. She knew her brother, and anything that could shut him up for that long had to be serious. At the point where everyone was starting to shuffle awkwardly, Helen broke the ice. "I suggest we get started with a swim. We have a lovely pool in the back garden, and it has only one rule." She paused, already starting to undo the buttons on her blouse. "Everyone swims naked." As the whole crowd looked on, Helen removed her blouse and tossed it carelessly on her seat. The bra came next with a quick flick of one arm behind her back. The boys went wide-eyed at that. Dawn too had started to move, and with her Luke and Sam. When Helen slipped the waist of her skirt over her ass and elegantly stepped out of it, Luke froze. His shirt bunched up under his chin. His thoughts escaped him in a soft voice meant only for himself. "No panties," he said. He stayed frozen, mute, as Helen tossed the skirt on the seat and started her walk to the pool. As she passed the boy, she paused and spoke to him in a similar tone, yet audible to all in the room. "Never wear them, young man." Dawn was now naked, so Luke rushed to follow. Wherever the beautiful, white girl was going, he was going too. Sam was naked, and had joined Dawn. The movement of those three kicked Ben, and Lucy, and Adam into action. They watched as Luke joined the two young girls as they pranced through the house. Alistair slowly unbuttoned his shirt, distracted by the sight of all the children getting naked. As he stepped out of the last of his clothes he shared an observation with the final two, still standing there fully clothed. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Obviously meaning the naked children. Zena and Martin stared at each other as the naked white man casually walked away, their eyes screaming WTF at each other. As if as one, they realized how silly they now looked, standing there stunned, still fully clothed. They stripped as fast as they could and walked briskly through the house in the direction the others had gone. Zena used one arm to hide both breasts, with the other hand pressed against the front of her pussy. Martin was using both hands in a vain attempt to hide both dick and balls. When they caught Alistair, he sprinted off, jumping into the pool feet first, tucked in a ball. Water went everywhere. Zena and Martin jumped, most awkwardly, into the pool still trying to hide their private parts. When everyone appeared settled Helen swam to the shallow end of the pool and stood, breasts fully exposed to all. She cupped her hands in front of her mouth and yelled. "Second rule," she shouted, getting everyone's attention. "If anyone tries to hide any part their anatomy behind their hands." As she spoke she demonstrated with her own exposed breasts and pussy. "I will go to my office and get the handcuffs I have there, and I will personally cuff the offender's hands behind their back." And she didn't stop there. "If you are female and your nipples are poking out like this." And again she demonstrated with her own body. "There are a bunch of boys here that really want to see them." And boys. "If that tool of yours is pointing to the sky, I'm joining the queue of girls that want to see it." She ended her tirade with an elegant duck dive into the pool, her tight, pink ass rolling into view for all to see. When she surfaced, Zena was quick to swim over to her for a chat. The two stood face to face, the water lapping just below their shoulders. Each woman could clearly see the other's breasts. "I know the breast hiding comment was directed at me." Zena offered an apology. "That's okay. I said it because you look so fantastic. Your nipples are gorgeous," Helen said to soothe her guest. With her last words, Helen reached forward and gently touched Zena's tits. "Please don't hide them." "What do we do from here?" Zena asked. Though general, Helen knew what she was asking. "We play. We let the kids splash around and get to know each other. Sooner or later, some of them. Sorry. Some of us will peel off for some of that other fun. Sex," Zena offered. Absolutely. Helen replied. Then after a bit. Actually. The first pairs are usually the most awkward. We could play matchmaker here. She offered. How do you mean? Well, I'm guessing that everyone wants to try a black-white combo. Oh, you are okay with me saying black and white? She added quickly. Sure, in this context. Then gesticulating between herself and Helen. Right here, right now, it's pretty damn obvious that I'm black and you're white. Actually, look at the two of us. You couldn't get much more of a difference. Okay, so I know that Ben would love to pair up with you or Lucy. Or both. Dawn is drooling over Adam, and I want your man. Helen paused. Will you lend him to me for a while? Pretty please. Xena laughed a little, and nodded. Helen went on. That leaves Luke and Sam with Alistair. Helen could immediately see the reservation on Xena's face. Let me tell you a little more about my wonderful man. Helen started. He is an author. He writes fiction. He tells stories. He creates worlds, and his favorite audience is kids. If those kids are not sexually active, then he makes those worlds appropriate for them. If he knows his audience is active, he adds lots of new things to his worlds, sexy things, naughty things, things they will never read in a book. Oh. Porn fiction? Xena asked as a guess. Sort of, and not really. Helen attempted to answer. Don't get me wrong. In Alistair's stories, when the fair princess is rescued by the knight in shining armor, she gives all of herself to him. Oh. I'm starting to get it. Alistair is the knight in that story, and Sam would be the princess. Perhaps, but I never get to hear the stories. Alistair forbids it. What? True. He has explained it to me many times. If the story is retold, it evaporates, is gone. So he tells the kids not to tell anyone. And they do it. Dawn steadfastly refuses to tell me anything. She has told me in roundabout ways that the stories are naughty and sometimes very sexy. She says. Helen paused. Dawn. Come here for a minute. Dawn swam over to her mother and gave her a little cuddle. Yes, Mom. Dawn, tell Xena about your dad's sexy stories. Mom, you know I'm not going to do that. I promised. Dawn objected. Generalize. Tell Xena about the stories, without telling her the stories. Oh, okay. You know how people have sexual fantasies. They see someone in the street and image what they would be like. Well, Dad starts telling a story and gets you to join in, make comments. He picks up on your comments and begins to change the story, add sexy bits. Before you know it, he is telling your very own sexual fantasy, and most of the time he is in it. Okay. And your mom is saying that Sam and Luke might like that. Oh. Yes. Mom, they have to go with Dad. Dawn replied excitedly. Settle down, young lady. And keep this to yourself. Helen added, squeezing her daughter to hold her still. Xena stood there a moment, weighing Dawn and Helen's words. It was a big decision to send her 10-year-old daughter off with a 40-year-old man. I'm going to trust you on this. Mainly because you, young lady, were so excited about it. Helen turned her attention to Dawn. Dawnie, I'll let you tell them all. Don't get too excited. Prep the kids and be with them for a bit, then disappear and let your father tell his story. Okay? Dawn nodded and swam away. She will do a fine job there. She is very responsible, especially if she knows she must. Helen advised. You said prep the kids. What did you mean? Xena questioned. Tell them that Alistair has a story that is just for them. Let them know that they must not tell anyone, not even her. Her preamble will add even more mystery to it. And get them ready for sex. Empty bladders, empty bowels, you know. Both of them? Xena was taken aback. Sure. Luke is going to be part of this story too. Alistair will be gentle, and he never forces kids into anything. If Luke comes back, having had anal sex with Alistair, it will be because Luke wanted it. Trust me. The two ladies looked around. The pool was considerably more empty. Dawn had taken Sam and Luke to the bathroom. Adam had followed along to find out what they were doing. Lucy and Ben were nowhere to be seen. Alistair was by the pool drying off, getting ready for the session with the kids. Martin was sitting, still dripping wet on the side of the pool, chatting with Alistair. We need to go find Lucy and Ben so I can have your man all to myself. Helen offered. Actually no. Xena said, quite abruptly, leaving her change of heart intentionally vague. Helen just stood there, not sure of what to say. Xena put her out of her misery after a second or two. "My man, as you so politely put it, once told me of one of his fantasies." Xena paused. "With just you? Me and that hunk over there the only ones left in the pool. I'm going to leave you to guess what it is." "Oh, yes please," Helen answered like a little girl. "And not just me and him. And you and him. I want a piece of you as well. I've been wanting to suck those gorgeous black tits of yours since you got here." "Me too," Xena replied, then realizing that her reply was ambiguous. "Not my tits. Your tits." "Oh, you know." After a few seconds of looking at each other's body, Helen came up with a plan. "Once Alistair has gone, Martin will realize that there are only 3 of us left. Let's ignore him and just start to make out. I'm so desperate to kiss you and suck you right now, I won't have to act." "How long do you think he will last?" "Not long," Xena replied. "Not long at all." They started immediately, but were very subtle. They slowly moved to the shallow end and started to caress each other. Gently and slowly so he didn't see any sudden movements. They watched as Dawn delivered the 2 kids to Alistair, then slipped away, hand in hand with Adam. Helen slowly swung around in front of Xena, who was leaning back against the edge of the pool. With her back to Martin, and her head hiding Xena's face, Helen leaned forward and began to kiss her new lover. Xena wrapped her black arms around Helen's pale white back and held her close as the 2 locked lips. Martin wasn't paying attention until he saw his wife's arm wrapped around another woman. He watched for a moment to make sure he wasn't seeing something else. "Yes, that is what I think it is. Xena and Helen are pashing, making out." Now he was watching for another reason. This was good. Xena slid one hand down Helen's back, and with her extra height was easily able to rub and caress both of Helen's ass cheeks. Xena felt the buzz in her mouth as Helen started to purr. The kissing became more intense. Helen's arms were now tight around Xena's slender shoulders. And Martin was now sitting there with a massive boner. Xena's hand slid down Helen's ass crack and started to massage her tight little anus. Martin's hand was now on his cock. Xena could see him out of 1A. When he started to masturbate, she thrust her hand deeper and began to play with Helen's pussy. When Helen felt the tiny nod from Xena, she broke away from the kiss and squealed a little. "Oh yeah. Stick them in deeper," she cried, making absolutely sure Martin could hear her delight. Xena stared at her man for a moment, then, "Are you gonna just sit there, or do you want to help?" Martin jumped to his feet and ran to them. He splashed into the shallow water and moved in behind Helen. "Do you think you could find somewhere to stick that tool of yours in this lovely white lady I have here?" Xena asked. Then to Helen. "Helen sweetie, do you care which hole he shoves it in?" Still holding Xena in a tight bear hug, she replied, half screaming. "Cunt first. Stick it in my cunt." Martin bent his knees to lower himself by a foot or so. He came forward and straightened himself, spearing Helen up the middle with his huge black cock. When he was fully upright, he was lifting Helen off the ground more than 6 inches. Martin wrapped his arms around Helen and Xena and pulled both of them upright. With Xena now standing, Helen's feet were more than a foot in the air. Helen clung to Xena's neck, sandwiched between the 2 black giants. Xena slid her hands under Helen's thighs, lifted her higher and spreading her legs at the same time. Once they were in position, Helen sandwiched there like the cream in a giant Oreo. Martin started to fuck her. Hard. Martin was strong and could lift himself up under her with a lot of force. She felt his wet skin slide on her back. She felt her wet breasts sliding against Xena's wet breasts. She felt the slender fingers spreading her legs wide. Martin was pushing her up and down too much for her to be able to lock lips with Enos, so both women leant forward and tasted the salt on each other's neck as it slid by. And Martin kept on fucking hard. This was Martin's first fuck of the day. He had foregone sex at training to be home in time for their appointment. He had listened while his family told their sex stories to Helen, and he had told his own. He had watched 6 naked children frolicking in the pool for close to an hour. He needed to blow. Helen knew it was happening when Martin's pace slowed and her uterus was pushed up into her throat. They hung there a moment as the cum drained from his body to hers. He gave his new fuck buddy a gentle kiss on the back of her neck and leaned back, his arms still wrapped around both women. He released them as they hit the water, letting the group fall apart, tearing the cock out of its hiding place. The cold water rushed over their hot bodies, and up into Helen's even hotter cunt. It was still gaping open, allowing the cold water to flood in all the way to her cervix. What she felt was not an orgasm, but the buzz that went through her body left her clutching for her pussy, screaming. Xena scrambled to help her get to her feet in the shallow water. "Did he hurt you? Are you okay?" Xena asked, desperately worried that Martin had torn her apart. Helen, still panting from the shock, managed to reply. "No. No. I'm okay. It wasn't Martin. It was the cold water." Helen finally explained to her worried guests exactly what had happened. Together they walked back up to the house and Helen poured them a drink. They were mostly finished when the others started to appear. Lucy and Ben surfaced first, soon followed by Adam and Dawn. Helen suggested that Ben might wish to offer his guests a soda or snacks, waking the boy up to his duties. Dawn, feeling sorry for her stupid brother, jumped up and helped. But still no sign of Alistair. "Should we worry?" Xena asked Helen, anxious for her little ones. "Not at all. They have only been gone about 25 minutes. No. We don't interrupt. They will be having a whale of a time. Who knows, there may be a whale in the story." Helen answered. "Donnie? Is the sauna on?" "Yes, Mommy. Adam and I were just in there." Helen leaned in very close to Xena's ear and whispered. "Queen Xena. Let me take you into the steamy African jungle and lick the juice from your steamy African pussy." Xena turned her head, astonished at the offer she just received. Helen went back to her ear and continued. And we'll see how many of the tribe follow." Without another word, Helen took her Nubian queen by the hand and led her down to the sauna. Xena held Helen's hand tight as the two naked women walked away, white and black asses rolling went. When they were in the room, Xena was the first to speak. "Were you kidding back there? Do you really want to lick my pussy? Get up on the bench, spread your legs, and I'll show you." Helen helped Xena onto the top bench of the sauna, back to the wall. Helen sat on the bench below, facing Xena, her legs dangling under Xena. Helen spread her new partner's legs and held her feet at the edge of the bench until Xena was comfortable with the position. Staring into Xena's gaping wide cunt, Helen finally answered Xena's question, plunging her face into the juicy vulva. Helen didn't start with Xena's vagina, opting instead for her generous meaty clitoris. She sucked the flesh between her lips and massaged Xena's hard clit with her tongue. Both women heard the door open, but neither saw who entered. Helen's eyes were pushed against Xena's bushy pubic hair, and Xena was content to remain in blind ecstasy, her eyes shut tight, her mind deep in her own cunt. It wasn't just one or two of the others, all five filed in and took up positions watching the women have sex. Within seconds, Martin and the two boys had full erections. Dawn and Lucy could not help themselves, their hands slid between their legs to deal the moisture which started to flow. When they saw each other masturbating, Dawn pointed to Lucy, then to a position on the top bench next to Xena. Lucy climbed up and spread her legs just like her mother. Dawn was shorter than her mother, so instead of sitting she grabbed a towel and knelt on her bench. Soon the daughters were doing exactly as the mothers, Dawn's tongue wed firmly in Lucy's cunt. The boys moved about slowly, looking at the girl-on-girl, mother-on-mother action, each with his cock in hand. Martin sat straddling the bottom bench next to Helen, his cheek resting against Xena's foot as he masturbated. Ben took up the matching position on the other end, looking in at his sister's face buried in Lucy's cunt, cock in hand. Adam continued to stand, also cock in hand, watching the action from different angles, bending down to look into Dawn's ass poking out into the room. Ben blew first. When he knew he was about to climax, he stood and squirted his load over Lucy's tits. Adam saw the white cum against his sister's black skin and decided to add his own to the mix. Martin, seeing what the two boys had done, knew he had to decorate Xena the same way. He stood and jacked off hard until he completed his own paint job. Helen and Dawn had been watching the show and kept on licking and sucking until all 3 loads had been delivered. Once Martin was done, they lifted their sticky, wet faces away from Xena and Lucy's spread wide, sticky, wet cunts. They all stood or sat exactly as they were for some time, taking in the view. Xena slowly inspected her own chest, then her daughters, the wet faces below her, the 3 boys all still cock in hand, and she laughed. "See?" she exclaimed. "That's how you promote racial harmony."